So I thought we could start with another period of meditation of what we've been doing so far, the meditation on the breath, and incorporating the different things I've taught about what kind of obstacles can occur and how to deal with those. There's a lot of information about meditation. In one way, it's kind of very simple. You know, you just sit down and watch your breath come in and go out. But then because our minds are complicated, we have really complicated minds, so then it's our complicated mind that makes meditation difficult, complicated, not so easy. Okay, so again, we'll go through the four steps or components of a meditation session, starting with sitting in a good position. So this is going to be a little challenging, perhaps, because it's the afternoon, it's warmer, we had lunch, depending on how much food you ate. So it can be challenging to meditate after eating lunch. So we might experience the problem of sleepiness, lethargy, sleepiness. But we know how to deal with that, right? We know what to do if that happens. So we just have to apply that, those methods, those remedies to the problem of sleepiness. And we won't meditate for too long, maybe 15 minutes. Okay, so first is getting ourselves into a comfortable but conducive position for doing meditation. So that means either sitting on the floor with your legs crossed in whatever way works for you, or sitting on a chair with your feet flat on the floor. And everyone needs to keep their back straight, unless you have some physical complication that doesn't allow you to keep your back straight. But otherwise, keeping the back straight is important. It does help our mind to be more awake and alert, clear, concentrated. And then have your hands resting in your lap, right on top of left, the two thumbs touching, arms a little bit away from the sides of the body, not pressed against your sides. And the shoulders relaxed. Mouth and jaw relaxed. And the tongue touching the roof of the mouth behind the upper teeth. Eyes either partially closed, if you can do that, or closed all the way. But keeping them partially open, partially closed, is a good countermeasure to sleepiness, dullness, lethargy. Just having that little bit of light coming into your eyes can help you to stay awake and alert. And if you just focus your gaze on some point in front of you, on the floor, your lap, table, that way you don't move your gaze around and look at things that could distract you. And the head and neck are tilted downwards just a little bit. So those are the 7 points of the recommended posture, the 7-point posture. So just do your best with that. If you have difficulty with some of those points, then just make whatever adjustments you need. It is important to be comfortable, not in pain. So try to find a position that isn't overly painful, but still good to have a meditative state of mind, a clear, focused state of mind. And let's next do the motivation. So as I mentioned this morning, an easy, simple way of generating a good motivation is just to say something to yourself like, may this meditation be of benefit to others, to the world. Or you can change the words, use whatever words work best for you, help you generate an altruistic motivation. So just take a few moments to do that. So then, when you're ready to begin the actual meditation, put your attention on your breathing in whatever way works best for you, wherever you are able to experience the breath most easily and clearly. So focus your attention, your awareness at that place, and then do your best to keep your focus on that place where you feel the breath, being aware of each breath as it is coming in and as it is going out. And there's usually a pause between one breath and the next, and also between inhalation and exhalation. So just because there's a pause doesn't mean your mind can run away. So continue keeping your mind focused on that place where you feel the breath, even during the pause. And really try to be aware of or pay attention to the full inhalation of the breath and the full exhalation of the breath, one breath after another. You can use the counting method if you find that helpful, counting up to 10 breaths and starting again at 1 when you reach 10. And then have a part of your mind be like a spy watching your mind to see what it's doing. whether it's paying attention to the breath or doing something else, thinking about something else, paying attention to sounds that you hear. So anytime your mind goes away from the breath to something else, as soon as you notice that, let go of that other object, put it aside, and bring your awareness back to your breath. And look out for other hindrances that were talked about, and if you notice any of them, like sleepiness or sense desire, ill will, and so on, understand that those are hindrances, obstacles to your practice, to your development of concentration and other states of mind. And again, let go of those other attitudes, put them aside, come back to the breath. So just do the best you can to keep your mind focused on the breath, one breath after another, and returning to the breath whenever the mind goes elsewhere. Okay, so we can bring our meditation to a close and do a dedication, a mental dedication just of this meditation that we did. So we started off wanting to benefit others, wanting our meditation to be beneficial to others and to the world. So let's remember that and dedicate the effort we made, the experience we've had, the good energy we created. Dedicate that to all living beings. May it bring peace, happiness, well-being, and freedom from all suffering and its causes for all living beings. Okay, and you can open your eyes and change your position if you need to. Okay, so next, there's a few other kind of problems that can occur in meditation. So I thought to talk about those. The next slide. So discomfort or pain, we did look at that yesterday, and I explained that method taught by Bhante Gunaratana for kind of focusing on the pain and then overcoming resistance, physical and mental resistance to the pain, and that can really help to ease the mind, and sometimes the pain itself will go away. And even if it doesn't, your mind is just changed. You have a different attitude about it, so you're not so freaked out, upset, anxious, and you can deal with it better. But I wanted to share something else. There's a sutra called the Salata Sutra in the Pali Canon. And in that sutra, I'll just summarize what the Buddha said. But he said that when we experience pain or probably any kind of problem, it's like being shot with an arrow. And different people will respond differently to pain. Ordinary people, people who aren't spiritual practitioners, just ordinary people, will get upset and they worry, complain, cry, and wail. So they react, in those ways to pain. And another thing that people often do is try to escape, find an escape route from the pain. And that can involve taking drugs, alcohol, just running away. Instead of dealing with it, they try to run away from it and get caught up in some other experience. Different people have different escape routes. For some it could be drugs and alcohol, for other entertainment, or hanging out with their friends, or eating. There's lots of ways that we can try to get away from pain and problems. And so the Buddha said, if you do that, if you respond to pain or to a problem in one of those ways, then it's like shooting yourself with a second arrow. Okay, so having one arrow stuck in your body is bad enough. And then if you shoot yourself with another arrow, you got double the pain, double the problem. And so what he means by that is that if we don't respond skillfully to pain, to a problem, but get upset and worry and cry and complain and blame and moan and all those kind of things, or try to run away from it, escape from it, then we're just creating more problems, more suffering for ourselves. Instead of alleviating the problem, we're just exacerbating it. It's like adding more layers onto the problem that's there. Has anyone ever experienced that? That makes sense. But then the Buddha said, he was giving this teaching to some of his monk disciples. He said that, on the other hand, a learned, noble disciple, that means someone who knows about the spiritual path and is practicing it. So such a person, when they experience pain, they do not worry, complain, cry, and wail, and try to escape, try to run away from it. Their mind doesn't give rise to disorder and derangement. They have only the painful feelings, like in the body, but not in the mind. So they say it's like a person who's just got one arrow, but not another arrow, not two arrows. They just stay with that first painful situation and deal with it in a wise way, in a skillful way, with mindfulness. And he says, this is because they understand things as they are and are not afflicted by attachment to what is pleasant, aversion to what is unpleasant, and ignorance about what is neutral. So this just shows the difference between people who don't know about spiritual practice, don't engage in spiritual practice, and people who do, who understand it very well and practice it very well, how they respond to pain or any other kind of difficult situation. So, if we do know more about the Dharma, about meditation practices and so on, we can use the Dharma to deal with problems, deal with difficulties, and in that way we don't increase our suffering. We don't shoot ourselves with more arrows. Yeah, so the key is understanding how things exist, like they're impermanent, and also understanding emptiness. If you have the understanding of emptiness, the true nature of things, you can use that, but that's difficult, more difficult than impermanence. So at least the understanding of impermanence, the impermanent nature of things, can really help. And also in our tradition, the Tibetan tradition, there's a whole section of teachings and practices called lojong, or mind training, thought training. This is a really popular, important aspect of all traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. And within that group of teachings, there are methods that can be used when facing problems, whether it's a physical problem like sickness or pain, or any other kind of problem like a relationship problem, or losing a loved one, any kind of problem that we have. There are methods we can use to turn that situation into part of our spiritual practice, to increase our compassion, our love, our wisdom, and so on. For example, just to give an example, when we face a problem, we can think about other people who have a similar problem, or even worse problem. And that way, we see our own problem in perspective, such that instead of just focusing, this problem that I have, it's so terrible, it's so horrible, and get all overwhelmed by it, But if we think about other people and some of the problems other people have, we realize, ooh, my problem is actually not so bad. It's quite small, manageable. And so that way we get less upset about our problem, but it also helps us increase compassion because we're thinking about others who have similar problems or even worse problems. So that opens our heart to think, oh, how sad that is, and I would really like to help them. And so that's the cultivation of compassion. So that's using a problem, a painful situation, to increase compassion. That's just one example, but there's lots of these kind of methods that we can use when we're experiencing problems that help us in our Dharma knowledge, our understanding of the Dharma, our practice of the Dharma. So they actually help us grow spiritually along the path. And they just give a lot of peace of mind as well. They really help our mind to stay peaceful, positive, calm, instead of all upset and worried and negative and so on. Yeah, so pain and problems aren't necessarily bad things. We usually don't like them when they happen, but it all depends on how we work with them, how we deal with them. Yeah, and with knowledge and skill and wisdom, we can turn them into something very productive, very beneficial. Okay, then noise. So it's usually recommended that when you practice meditation, you do it in a quiet place. But it's actually very hard to find a quiet place. And not just in Singapore, but even other places. Because I've had the opportunity to stay in places that are up in the mountains, very far away from cities, and it's just nature. Very relatively quiet, but there's always some noise. There's birds singing, there's geckos, quack, quack, quack. Yeah. And even, when you don't have those kind of noise, you can maybe even hear your heart beating. Or your mind will sort of invent noises. Yeah. So I don't think there's any place that you can go where you won't have some noise. And so it's just a question of learning how to deal with the noise. The problem isn't the noise itself, but how we react to it. What happens in our mind about the noise. So probably what's typical is to get annoyed about it. That's my problem. I get very annoyed, irritated, bothered by noises. And then I start thinking, oh, how can I stop this noise? How can I get rid of it? How can I get away from it? And so it becomes like a disturbance. But maybe there are other cases where people get attracted to the noise. Like if it's music, the kind of music that you like, your neighbor is playing music and it's the kind of music you like, then your mind will go, pay attention to that music, enjoy it. But then you're losing your concentration, right? It's very hard to stay concentrated on your object. So this is the problem. Either we have aversion, dislike, irritation, or we have desire, attachment, right? It's hard to just ignore it and carry on with our practice. But that's the ideal thing to do, is to find a way to not react with attachment or aversion. And if you can stop the noise, then, that's fine. Or put earplugs, or what are those, like, noise-canceling earphones? I haven't tried that for meditation, but some people do. So that's another option. Oh, I guess you can use now they have the what do they call the eye, made by Apple? These things you stick in your ears. I forget what they're called. Earbuds. So they can cancel noise as well. I haven't tried them, but some people use them. So you can try to stop the noise or not, shut it out. Or just learn to not be bothered by it, not pay attention to it. And it takes effort, but it's possible. In fact, they say that when someone has developed calm abiding, shamatha, their mind is so focused, so concentrated, that even if somebody's beating a drum right next to their ears, they're not bothered. They don't even notice it. So that shows super strong concentration. So those are some tips, advice on how to deal with noise. And then the third one is unusual experiences. I did talk about that this morning, and said, yeah, it does happen, and they're usually temporary. They don't last long. They come and they go, and so it's best to just notice that it's there, but don't get emotional about it. Don't get excited about it or frightened. Just see it as like a side effect, kind of a side effect of the practice of meditation, and it should go away after a while. If we just ignore it and don't get excited about it, it should stop after a while. And then the last one is expectations and discouragement. So Lama Yashi used to say to us, don't have any expectations when you meditate. And I've heard similar advice from other teachers. So having expectations, I think it's something we probably do unconsciously and not deliberately or consciously. I think because we want happiness, right? We want to be happy, we want to be peaceful, we want to have good experiences, and we want to get away from painful, unpleasant, bad experiences. So I think that kind of motivation underlies just about everything we do, right? Everything we do is motivated by that wish to have good experiences and avoid bad experiences. And so it's only natural that we have that attitude when it comes to meditation. Yeah, so we probably heard about meditation and how it can bring you happiness and peace and this and that experience. And we think, yeah, that sounds good, that's what I want. And so we have that motivation as part of our reason for practicing meditation. We want good experiences. And in some cases, like I mentioned yesterday, people, they heard about or saw movies about, people who get these fantastic powers and experiences, and they can fly through space and walk through walls and read people's minds and do all these magical things after practicing meditation. And so then they may get excited about that and hope to have those kinds of experiences from practicing meditation. So those are examples of expectations, yeah. And it's hard not to have expectations, even if we try, but we should try to avoid them, because otherwise they can lead to problems such as discouragement or depression if we don't get what we expect. Yeah, and we might even give up the practice of meditation because we're not getting the experiences that we hoped for, that we expected. I like to tell this story. One time I was teaching a 10-day course on meditation, Introduction to Buddhism and Meditation in Dharamsala, Tushita Retreat Center, Dharamsala. So they have courses every month, and they're very popular. We usually have 60, 70 people coming to these courses. And most of them are pretty new. They're just starting off with meditation and learning Buddhism. And so we have talks and meditations. And about one of these courses I was teaching, about on day 3 into the course, during a break, this young man came up to me and he said, "You know, I've been meditating for 3 days now and nothing has happened." And I said, "Well, what did you think was going to happen?" And he said, "I don't know, but something should have happened by now." And I think he also said something like, "Other people are having experiences and I'm not having any experiences, so I'm going to leave. I don't want to continue doing this if I'm not going to have an experience." And so I thought that was kind of funny, because I had talked to them. I had, talked about this idea of expectations and how we should avoid having expectations. But I guess he wasn't listening, or he didn't understand that that's what was going on with him. So that's just an example. After just 3 days, 3 days of trying meditation, wanting to give it up because nothing exciting has happened. So, yeah, that would be sad. It would be sad to give up the practice because it didn't fit our expectations. Yeah, but anytime we do find ourselves sort of thinking, "Oh, why am I doing this? Is this really worthwhile? It's not turning out the way I thought it would be." So any feeling like that, a thought like that comes up in our mind is probably an indication that we did have expectations, even though we weren't aware of them, because now we're thinking, well, it's not what I expected. It's not how I thought it would be. So expectations are usually related to our ego and to attachment, desire. So we have this ego, this I, big fat I, that we're really concerned about, always wanting to make it happy and get what it wants, and an attachment, desire. So the ego is sort of grasping for certain wonderful experiences that we want to have. And then when we don't get those within a certain time frame, we also sometimes have, maybe unconsciously, a certain time frame, like within a certain amount of time I should have this experience, like that young man in the course, 3 days. After 3 days he's ready to give it up because he didn't get what he thought he would get. And and then, so it's our ego, it's attachment. And that itself puts obstacles in the way of having genuine benefits coming from meditation, because meditation does lead to benefits, it does lead to good results. But to be able to get those results, we have to be willing to let go of our ego and our attachment. If our ego and our attachment are driving us, then it's kind of like we're pushing the good results further away from us, putting up barriers to getting those good results. Does that make sense? Yeah, so grasping at, egotistical grasping at certain results of meditation is actually counterproductive, is pushing away the results that we can get. So if we do want to have those results, we need to let go of our grasping, our attachment, our ego, and just be ready to experience whatever happens in meditation. Of course, we should try to follow the instructions as we've been taught, do the practice correctly, but try to do it without expectations, without that kind of grasping attitude. I want this experience, I want to feel good. So, yeah, I've heard this many teachers in different traditions talk about this and stress the importance of it. So it's something to be aware of, to be on the lookout for, and try to avoid. So, yeah, meditation can lead to good results, to beneficial experiences, but it does take time, and we can't force those changes to happen. We can't force good experiences to come. We have to practice, and slowly, gradually, little by little, the results will come. And it's also good to think that just making the effort to meditate, just trying to meditate itself is a good thing to do, even if it may seem like we're not getting anywhere, right? And our mind is uncontrollable, it's going all over the place. But at least we're trying to do it, and try to do it with a good motivation, with sincerity, especially altruism. I do want to benefit others. I do want to work on myself, improve myself so I can be more beneficial for others. So if we have a good motivation, a sincere motivation, and we're trying to practice, that itself is good enough. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will be very happy with us. And so, yeah, try to not be upset or bothered if it seems like you're not getting anywhere, or, yeah, not getting the experiences you hoped. And also sometimes one thing that can happen, this happened to me, when you first start practicing meditation, you may have the impression that you're actually getting worse rather than better. Has anyone noticed that? Like more delusions, more confusion, more disturbance in your mind than before. I know one woman who came to a course that I was teaching in Australia said that. She said she took up the practice of meditation because she wanted to feel peaceful. But when she did meditation, she felt anything but peaceful because all these crazy thoughts in her mind. So I think that this is not correct. In fact, yeah, actually, in the traditional teachings, like the scriptures from India about cultivating concentration, shamatha, calm abiding, they actually talk about this. They actually mention that when you start trying to concentrate, trying to focus your mind and develop concentration, it can seem like you have more thoughts than before. So this was, India, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. This is the experience they had. So I think it's kind of normal. And the reason for that is because before we start practicing meditation, we're not really paying that much attention to our mind. Most of our attention is out there. We're looking at the world and people and work and so on. So our attention is focused out there, not inside. And so we don't really see what's going on in our mind. And then when we sit down to meditate and try to concentrate our mind, then it's like we become aware of all these thoughts and emotions and other things going on in our mind. And they were there before. It's not like they're new and suddenly started happening just because you're meditating. They were always there. You just didn't notice them. So try not to be bothered by that. Try not to be fooled by that and think, oh, meditation is making me crazy. I'm getting worse than I was before. Don't think that way. That's not the case. You're just becoming aware of how crazy you've always been, and you just didn't notice it. And they use an analogy in the teachings of washing clothes. If you have really, really dirty clothes, and let's say you don't have a washing machine, you have to wash them by hand. So you put them in a bucket of soapy water. And before you put the dirty clothes in, the water is kind of clean. You put the dirty clothes in and then the water gets gray, brown, really dark. But that's good. That means the dirt is coming out, right? The dirt has to come out. You have to see the dirt to be able to get rid of it. So it's kind of similar with our mind. If we want to get rid of the dirt in our mind, all the disturbing thoughts and emotion in our mind, we have to see them. We have to be willing to see what's there and then scrub hard to clean them, get rid of them. Yeah. So yeah, meditation is a method to purify our mind of disturbing thoughts and emotions that have been there all along, and we just didn't notice them, or we did notice them, but we didn't know what to do about them. We didn't know how to manage them. So we finally have this chance to work on those. So it's important to understand that and be patient. Be patient and try not to worry that you're getting worse than before. Okay, so those are some common problems or obstacles that people encounter when they practice meditation. So if you do face any of these, it's good to know that you're not alone. You're not the only one who has these problems. Lots of other people have had them as well. And you just have to know how to manage them, how to deal with them. They're not insurmountable. Okay, so we have just 1 hour left, and I thought that most of the time up to now, we've been looking at one type of meditation, stabilizing, or also called placement meditation, which is for developing concentration and eventually calm abiding, shamatha. And then yesterday I talked about another kind of meditation that's called analytical.